Ladies and gentlemen, tonight's performance is about to begin.
Welcome to the world of sex. I am your host, Dr. Kaci, and today's guest is Miss Carla. Hey, Carla, tell us a little bit about yourself.
Hello, Kaci. Thank you so much for having me. So I'm a certified and trauma-informed sex, love, and relationship coach. I work internationally with men and women, helping them understand themselves and each other sexually and relationally. So obviously we're talking about sex, and just to give you a little bit of a very short background history of sort of my own personal journey. I grew up Catholic with Southern Italian heritage, so I had quite a narrow view, let's say, of sexuality growing up, sort of like the idea of the whore or virgin, you're either one or the other. And due to my attachment style and due to that upbringing, for myself, I was very much like, okay, you know, I can't be a sexual person because otherwise that will ruin my chances of ever having a long-term partner. So I spent a lot of my life repressing my sexuality, thinking that, you know, if I got too slutty, then nobody would want to be in a long-term relationship with me. And I think, you know, there's certain elements of cultural conditioning around that. So roll on like a couple of decades, and I'm, you know, a mum with married with chronic anxiety. I have like this sort of awakening, let's say, and start diving into my own past and my own traumas. Generic sort of small t traumas, let's say. And on that journey, I, you know, started exploring and thinking to myself, you know, I'm doing all of this healing work around like my ego, and, you know, my patterns. I learned what boundaries were. I hadn't even heard of boundaries up until that point. And then I decided, you know, I could really support other women who need this transformation. I would really like to be a coach. And also around the same time, I was thinking, and my sex life with my husband could be better. You know, I was having orgasms, so technically everything was, in inverted commas, working properly, right. But it just felt like something could be more or better. And I didn't really know what that was. If you sat me down and said, what does better sex look like to you? I would just would have gone, I have no idea. I just have this inner knowing that I could just feel more or be more. And so I did a training to be a sex, love, and relationship coach. And my original idea was, I'm going to learn loads about sex, which can help me in my relationship with my husband. And then I can learn the coaching skills and coach mums on anxiety and that sort of thing. But actually, within the first 3 or 4 months of doing the training, those months were really exploring our sexuality. So all of the conditioning, the religious conditioning came up. All of this sort of like, you know, how the patriarchy has influenced how we show up as women, and, you know, exploring relationships and relationship styles. Like, you know, the idea of polyamory and non-monogamy was also brought to, you know, my peripheral vision. So, it was like a initial few months of really sort of diving into my sexuality, so much so that like a few months later, my husband and I decided to go non-monogamous. And that originally looked like dating. We went to some play parties. Well, we went to one play party
Wait, because those are all of my questions. Okay, so when you saw the ad about this show or the post, what made you decide that you wanted to come on the show? Like, what was it that you was like, oh man, that I really need to get on there?
Blowjobs.
I love blowjobs. Those are my favorite things to give.
Yeah. Well, this is the thing. So, like, most of us talking about sex, you know, if we're, you know, into cock, you know, and cock's our thing, then yeah, we tend to sort of quite assume that a lot of people do. But my personal journey was, you know, like 20 years ago when I was repressing my sexuality, like blowjobs were really slutty and shameful. And, you know, if I enjoyed them, there's no way I was going to get married, you know. So I did them because I got asked, but I didn't want to enjoy them because if I did, you know, that would make me basically a whore. So part of my learning journey and, you know, those 3 or 4 months when I first did my training was actually connecting to that part of myself that was my inner slut. And rather than sort of like holding her in the shadows,
Mm-hmm.
which, you know, by having something in the shadows, then you're projecting that onto other people, aren't you?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So rather than, you know, having her in the shadows and projecting her outwards, I decided to fully embrace my inner slut. And in doing so, it enabled me to really enjoy giving head. And that has been also part of my journey in my own sexual awakening. And I recently created a course for women also experiencing something similar. So women who feel that, you know, enjoying giving head is almost handing over their own power to men. This is something that I also felt, that if I was on my knees, you know, sucking a man's dick, that basically what I'm doing is handing over my sense of power to them. What I've since come to realize is that stepping into my own power and choosing to be there puts me in a situation of my own power rather than feeling like I'm giving it over to somebody. And also coming at it from a place of enjoyment as well, personal enjoyment, also feels that, yeah, it's my own choice, it's my own power. And you can get so much power from being in your own pleasure in touching another human being. So it was, you know, exploring these sorts of dynamics, these conditionings that I had grown up with, exploring all of that and basically modeling it into a course supporting other women to go through the same journey as well. And, you know, one of the things that I often say, and you'll probably have similar, you know, people saying similar things, that, you know, our sexuality is the very foundation of who we are as human beings. Like, you know, it's how we relate to ourselves, how we relate to other people. And it's also the place where we hold some of our deepest shame. And the problem is with shame, what that does is it creates contraction. So if we can learn to love and heal the parts of us which have the most shame, what that does is inevitably opens us up. And by doing so, what that does is it gives us access to an inner knowing and an inner confidence. You know, we connect more to our authentic expression, not just sexually, but in who we are as human beings. And then ultimately, because we're more connected to our authentic expression, we are able to, you know, step forward more in our careers and step forward more in our relationships and in our dating life and how we relate to other people and how we view and look at ourselves and how we love ourselves. So I just see sort of like the healing of sexuality, you know, as integral to who we are as, you know, especially if you're in the self-development path. And then, you know, blowjobs being considered for a lot of women even more shameful. You know, if you go down to a further level of shame, how much that can unlock within you, it just takes you deeper, really.
Yeah, so when you talk about the giving head portion, one of my first posts that I made on Instagram that kind of went viral amongst my close net of friends was me talking about giving head, because I always loved it and I wanted to teach people how to give good head, because a lot of women that I know even was like they didn't like it. And I felt like maybe it's because of the person you're with or something about you and your mind. So when you say that, I understand what you mean, because I've had people that I know that had some type of mental aspect of giving head that didn't help them be aroused by it. And I was like, when you give head, you should be the wettest yourself. You should be pleasured by pleasuring him. Like something about it should make you feel good and arouse yourself. So that is one of my goals as a sex coach, is to teach women how to give head and how to embrace and accept that, because it's really pleasurable and it makes it better when you're both enjoying it, because you're more into it. The head get real sloppy when you are enjoying it, and then the sex is even better. So it does create a great level of passion. So when was the first time, or when did you lose your virginity? I know you say you grew up kind of religious.
Yeah, so that's one thing, but then also yeah, this is probably not going to make sense now after everything that I've said. And it does so let me say, so I lost my virginity at the age of 14, which is below the age of consent in the UK. And then I didn't have sex for a number of years until I was 17. And yeah, and then it was like in a long-term relationship. And I think a lot of the shame that I felt from that experience of being 14, what that did is when people found out about it, a lot of the boys of a similar age to me then obviously thought, well, if she's already done it once, then she's going to do it with me. And I would have, you know, some of the other boys interested in me in what appeared to be a relationship.
Sex. Yeah.
Yeah. So they thought, obviously she's done it once, she's going to do it again. And yeah, and that was the fear element that was put into me, I suppose. The fact that, okay, you know, this is how I'm perceived now. So I was, you know, and that was at school, that people were aware of that. But it happened with somebody that was in my village. And, you know, my village and my school were sort of two separate communities that didn't really know each other. And it wasn't massively known around the village that I had lost my virginity. So it wasn't something that, you know, the boys in the village generally sort of targeted me for, let's say. And, you know, because I did really well in the end, in, you know, well, in inverted commas, and managing, again, inverted commas, the perception that people had of me, you know, by my early 20s, I was considered not that type of girl. And also, you know, good wife material, which basically meant I had hit my goal of reversing potentially what I saw at the time as potential disaster. So that's the very brief story, I suppose, of, you know, my virginity and how that.
What was the most surprising thing that you discovered about sex?
Whatever, or around that time?
I mean, just period. Both. At that time, and then like now in your older age.
Okay, so at that time, the surprising thing about sex, I can't think of anything, because for me, it felt like it was more for the other person. Again, even though I had orgasms and everything felt like
because your enjoyment. Okay.
Yeah, because I didn't want to fully step into my own sexual expression, because I thought that was dangerous, you know, to go in that direction of who I might become.
Oh, do you think you would have overindulged?
No, I just think it was really important, that image that other people had of me, including my boyfriends, that, you know, that they saw me as a good girl. So that was really, really important to me. And it also, like I said before, when I was talking about the shadow, you know, it did create in me this sort of shadow piece, which then I projected onto other women and made judgments to them about their sexuality, not directly to them, but in my own head, you know, I made judgments about them. And then recently, I would say that, you know, one of the best things that can potentially happen to a couple is erectile disappointment, or sometimes known as dysfunction. And the reason being is, so I had a partner who, on like pretty much the first date, continuing what I did for a living, said, you know, hi, nice to meet you. I've got erectile dysfunction. That was pretty much the beginning of the conversation. I was like, oh, okay, this is quite a lot of information on the first date.
Yeah, because you could have got to know him and it might have been okay, but now he's told you, like, wait a minute, don't get too comfortable because I can't please you. Like, well, warm up to me a little bit.
But the interesting thing is, though, that what this did is, you know, the way that we handled it together, I was like, okay, I don't want you using Viagra. If you lose your erection, it's fine. We can just do something else. And then if you get your erection back, if not, then, you know, there's plenty of other things to do. And, you know, we can both still experience pleasure. You don't need penis in vagina to experience pleasure.
Right.
And what that did is it basically sort of almost forced and put us into a situation where we had to change our idea of what sex meant to us. And it just created this opportunity for like play and exploration, because when you think about it, most of us tend to get into the habit of like kissing, a bit of a fondle, some foreplay, penis in vagina, ejaculation, the end. At some point, the woman might orgasm, possibly not because of the orgasm gap, or she pretends. And, you know, so that's generally the way that it flows. And what we found was that, you know, because we could dip into penetration, come out, he plays with me, I play with him, we play with each other. It created this opportunity
to
for
explore, I'm sure.
And the sexual connection to last, like, rather than 20 minutes, for 2 to 3 hours, 4 hours of just sort of like taking our time, pausing, just connecting with a cuddle and then moving back into it. And it just really opened up the opportunity for exploration. And so, and one of the sort of benefits, I suppose, of that for my partner was that, it sort of in a way cured his erectile dysfunction, because it completely removed all of the pressure of needing an erection. And for most men, it's a
mental
thing.
Yeah,
so it's the pressure of needing to have an erection that means
that makes it hard for them to get hard. What is one of your wildest fantasies?
One of my wildest fantasies, a threesome with 2 men.
Okay. And what have you done? What is the wildest thing you've done sexually?
Oh gosh. So I have been to play parties, and a conscious kink play party. I had a threesome with a married couple. So with a man and a woman. So I suppose that's my wildest.
So how was that? So I go to play parties. I started this little journey last year. I've been celibate, so I feel kind of awkward in play parties because I'm not looking for sex, and it's hard for me to want to have sex with somebody that I just met. And it's nothing wrong if you can. It doesn't click like that for me. So I kind of feel awkward sometimes, but I like the environment. I like being in those places. I like the type of people that's there. They're very kind and open-hearted, very loving, of course, and sexual. Like, I love that environment, but I definitely feel a little awkward because I don't know. I don't know if it's because I don't know what's expected of me. Even this weekend, I'm going for a day to Savannah with this poly group of swingers, and they're already in the group chat, and they're like, yeah, we're gonna be doing this, and you hold one leg, I'm holding the other, and I'm sitting here like, oh my God, what am I getting myself into? So I'm a little nervous, but please tell me about your experience.
Yeah, so the events that I tend to go to are considered conscious. So what that means is a lot of the beginning part of the party, the play experience, so somewhere between 2 to 4 hours, is changing partners with different people, exploring consent and exploring boundaries. And, a lot of the exercises that we do are non-sexual. So it can literally just be touching somebody's arm, checking in with them, how that feels, in the conscious kink ones, there were elements of like pain and pleasure, but you could decide where you wanted to, how you wanted to. And if you were, then choosing to do the action on the other person, that, if you were the top, for example, then, you check in before doing things. You check in with the other person, what their boundaries are, and, using different code language. So there's a lot of practice beforehand of you really sort of tuning into your body and listening to yourself. What feels comfortable, what doesn't. If at any point you don't want to be with a particular partner, or you don't want to take part in a particular exercise, you are encouraged to step to one side, and you're welcome to watch or take yourself completely out of the space. And one of the things that they say is that if somebody says no to you, that your reply is, thank you for looking after yourself. So it just completely reframes.
Hi, I'm Kaci, Dr. Kaci. Welcome to Speaking Freedom. We are happy to have you, and we hope that we're able to help you in every way possible. Have a good evening.
The no. So it gives the power of the person who says no back to them.
Yeah, so because that can be it could make you feel bad or shameful or embarrassed, or like a number of things could come up once you have to say no, because it's uncomfortable to tell somebody no to begin with.
Exactly. And also for the person receiving no, rather than it be seen as a rejection on them or what they asked for, you know, by thanking the other person for looking after themselves, it just helps you to reframe it that it actually has nothing to do with you. You know, it has everything to do with
them.
what's within the boundaries of the other person. So, you know, creating these containers mean that, you know, the people that you're interacting with, so as you know, go through the different exercises, you have the, you know, the possibility, there is the invitation to change the different partner each time. What that means is that you get to experience different people's energy and who you like and who you don't like. And then when the free play space is open, which is like a couple of hours towards the end, because you've already had a reasonably good idea of most of the people in the room, not all of them, you know who you connect well with and, you know, whose energy feels good. And it was at the end of sort of that segment, just before the free play, that the couple approached me because I'd had an interaction with the husband within the couple. And so he and his wife came over to me and asked if I would join in with them. And I was like, yeah. And it was a really great experience because of the type of environment that it was. And it was all very
it's a
conscious
safe environment.
and boundaries. Yeah. So it was an amazing experience because a lot of the attention was on me. So rather than me feeling like a part, like a spare part, watching a couple interact and maybe getting a look in, you know, I was almost like their plaything. And that felt really great. You know, I didn't feel in any way like excluded. And you could tell that this couple beforehand had lots of conversations around what a threesome would look like to them, how they would go about it, how they would approach it. You could just tell by the way that how they communicated with each other, how they communicated with me, their constant check-ins with me about where they could touch me, you know, how they wanted to touch me. And it felt extremely, it felt extremely supported, and it was an amazing first experience. So definitely recommend it.
So I again, I like those environments. I think that it's a great adult experience. Because we're sexual beings and sex is very natural, although it's a taboo subject to talk about, which is why I am doing this, because one of the things that I wanted to do is bring the ability for married people, especially. I had recently got divorced when I first started talking about sex publicly. And I know that I was like sexless at the end. I mean, we started out, we were going strong probably about the first 45 days after not having sex until we got married. We had sex often. I mean, like, it was like, okay, let's take a break in here somewhere. Let's, you know, stagger this out a little bit, sir. But it ended up being a very sexless relationship. And so it made me want to help other couples make sure that they were being sexual, even if sex wasn't involved, because sex is definitely starts before you get to the bedroom. And it takes a lot of making sure the other person feels wanted all the time. And, you know, that's what brings the real sexual arousal and the passionate orgasms when it's time to be in the bedroom. So,
I hear that, and I hear from a lot of women when they say, oh, you know, my libido's dropped and this has happened and that's happened. And it's like, you know, how much of the household responsibilities are you taking on? Because quite often women are just plain exhausted, you know. They're not doing anything for themselves. And you know, to feel sexy and to feel desirable, it's not just up to the man to do that, but also, you know, you need to look in the mirror and go, I'm feeling good. And if you're not having any time for self-care, then you're just not going to feel sexy.
Right. And that is so true. And just sometimes women have to definitely initiate the contact. It may be initiating kisses and touches and things like that. And then, you know, but the closer that you get, the more talking and the more communication, the more just working on self together. Like, you can work on yourself and you can work on yourself, but you got to do it together also to make sure you don't grow apart. I think that really plays a part too. So, ladies, what I did after I got divorced, one of the things that I did to kind of make myself feel sexy, work on myself, I went to a couple strip clubs. And in the strip clubs, they walk around completely naked. I was very surprised at the first time that I went. But it made me want to come home and clean up with heels and be naked, like just practice loving on me more, which made me feel sexier, which made me feel less body shame because I struggled more with feeling like I need to be covered. I don't want nobody's man to want me. I don't want I don't want nobody to, and it's like that's a them problem, not a me problem. Like I should be able to dress how I want to dress. And if it's somebody else's man, they should be able to handle themselves. They should have their own self-control. But also for myself as a parent, I'm like, I got to be covered up. And there was a time where I thought when you turn 40, back in our day, I'm an 80s baby. When people were 40, they were like old, like they was all wrapped up and covered and all of that. Versus now, as a 40-year-old that's kind of in shape, I'm like, well, wait a minute, I want to show a little bit of skin. Like I look good. Let me not had all of this, especially because I hid it for so long.
No, I totally agree with that. And because your journey sounds very similar to mine. Yeah, I spent a lot of, I think, my 20s in my sexuality repressing it because I didn't want my light to shine too brightly, because otherwise then women might be frightened that I'm going to dim their light. So it was like, make myself small, not make myself seen, so I'm not threatening to other women. And I'm like, now, like, if I shine my light, I'm going to give you permission to shine yours.
Right.
And yes, and I did burlesque lessons as well. So that was a way to connect to other women, and be really, really sexual, but without necessarily doing it for the gaze of a man, but for my own sexuality and my own expression, and having a group of women who supported you and who thought you were great. And yeah, it's exactly the same for me. Like since hitting my 40s, it's a lot more like it feels like a second life, in fact.
It really does. Like, and my children are like just turning teenagers. I got a 13-year-old, a 14-year-old. So it's like, wait a minute, it's about time for me to get outside now.
I love that.
So do you have a kink?
Oh, do I have a kink? I like anal. I like being dominated. I like degradation. What else? Yeah, I would say those are my main ones.
Why?
Why? Oh my goodness me.
Okay.
So the anal, I would say, is probably because it's taboo and it's
I like anal.
Yeah, it's taboo and it's slutty, and I reconnected to my inner slut, and she's like all for it. The degradation aspect. So I've read a book called Your Brain on Sex. I'm not sure if you've read that one, and that looks at sort of like your kinks and your desires, and it explores those. And I grew up with an anxious attachment style. And the way that I related to a lot of men in my 20s was very much from a place of like victim and being mistreated. And those were the relationships that I got into. And what our kinks can teach us is how we are able to reframe past like traumas or wounds and actually take control of them, and they become a place of power. So I would say like the degradation is more of a sense of reclaiming that in myself, reclaiming the victim inside me that likes to be mistreated, and basically getting off on that. So yeah, that's the cognitive explanation, I suppose, of why I have that kink. Tying up, I would say it's because I get to really fully surrender.
Oh yeah.
And surrender in a passive way as well. Since I've explored my sexuality and I've become a lot more confident and initiate, now that I feel more in my power, I feel more comfortable in being, submissive, because I feel like I'm not being submissive and there's this feeling of losing power. It's like, I know I'm in my power. So now it feels good to play around with that and have the choice of surrendering that, but also knowing that at any point, I can shout red and I can stop and I get untied. So knowing that I have that option too.
So what is your sexual preference and ideal relationship dynamic?
Ooh. So when you say what's my sexual preference, in what sense? So like what?
Do you identify as a bisexual, trisexual? I know you're not monogamous, and
So
so go ahead.
yeah, yeah. So I am monogamish. So I go to play parties but don't do dating. And then with regards to my sexuality, I would say bi-curious.
Okay.
So yeah, so I am interested in having more experiences with women, because I went to an event called Lady Liquid Love, where basically loads of women naked, wearing blindfolds, and you lie down and have olive oil poured all over you, and you just get to sort of like have a feel of everything around you, and they feel you. And that was a really amazing experience, really sensual, and it felt comfortable as my first experience touching other women, because yeah, I think otherwise you just worry, don't you? Like, can I touch here? Can I not? And because it's like a signaling, because there's a signaling system of like, if someone taps you in a certain way, then you need to remove your hand. It was like, I had full opportunity for exploration.
Right.
And then obviously after my threesome experience as well, with the woman involved, I was like, okay, yeah, I want to explore this further. So I would say bike.
Okay. And so your thoughts on poly, when you say you are monogamish, are you like, I know you said y'all have somewhat of an openish type of relationship, but you're not dating. So what is your poly stance? Are you like, that is your flow, that's your groove, or you tell me.
So I started off non-monogamous. And then and that's when I was married. I am now, I'm not sure if your listeners are aware of relationship anarchy, but so my husband transferred into sort of like my co-parenting partner. So we parent together, and then and we live together in that type of unit. And then I have a boyfriend, and so we have made the decision to just be the two of us. Neither of us dates, and we attend events together. And then with regards to polyamory, yeah, I absolutely love that, and that's something that I was exploring within non-monogamy around this time last year. So having those romantic connections with more than one person. And I really like the idea of, a different person can meet different needs, so to speak. So so I really like the idea of that, and the communication that's required, the space holding that's required for each other as your own sort of triggers come up. And something that I really like, and this is so I was on TV in the UK a couple of weeks ago because I was at a tantra event that was filmed for Channel 4 here in the UK. And the presenter during the tantra event came over to me, and she was asking me questions. And what I liked about non-monogamy is the fact that, for example, jealousy is something that everyone agrees is going to happen. But what we've got to remember is jealousy also happens in monogamy, but we're just not allowed to talk about it. If you are jealous of your partner talking to somebody, you feel like most people in monogamous relationships feel like they need to hide it, like they need to deny that within themselves. Whereas in polyamory,
it's a natural thing.
Yeah, it's a natural emotion. You're going to feel jealous, whether you're monogamous or non-monogamous. You're going to do that. So people just don't want to talk about it and admit it. And the great thing is with polyamory, you can talk about it, and you can say it, and you can say, when I'm feeling really jealous because of this reason, and it's bringing up for me for this, and I'm feeling this emotion, and it's bringing up this wound for me, and this, it reminds me of this experience a few years ago, and taking full responsibility for it for yourself. But you have the opportunity to share it, get all of that off your chest, be completely seen by your partner, who sees you in your most vulnerable place, can thank you for that, give you a hug, maybe say, is there anything that I can do to support you right now? You know, maybe there are certain things, maybe not, you know, you come to that conclusion yourselves, and you just have this opportunity for real deep connection that, yeah, I think jealousy in a monogamous relationship, you just don't really have the opportunity to say that, to discuss it. You know, it's
I
not
mean, and then
something
most
that
people
people-
don't want to discuss it because it's an uncomfortable conversation about whether or not you have to set new boundaries with people that you may be comfortable with or supposed to be friends with. And a lot of times, people don't know how to prioritize their relationships. And that's a real thing, like because your wife or your significant other at whatever terms that y'all have come up with should be almost the most important, and then everybody else kind of fall in line and you set those right type of boundaries to where you can't stop people from doing things, but you can limit the occasion of the things happening that will be triggering for your relationship or your partner. And it shouldn't necessarily be your partner's job to set those boundaries. So it does make it very difficult, and it puts a lot of pressure because some people are just I think conditioned to not speak up for themselves, if not anything else. So is there any advice that you would give our listeners?
Oh my goodness me, advice. So do you have many male, female, like who listens to, like,
It's
non-binary, like
male, female, whatever type of advice you would give.
look at your genitals. So if you've got a vulva, make sure that you're looking at yourself in the mirror and building that relationship with your vulva. And if you are a cock holder, cock haver, I would say that to build a relationship with your cock by checking in with it when it's flaccid, rather than attaching yourself and your worth to an erect cock. Change your relationship to your cock while it's flaccid. So yeah, connection to your genitals.
Okay, and how can everybody get in contact with you if they want to find you online or follow you? What is your information for us?
So my website is carlacrivaro.com. I have an Instagram account, and you know, being a sex coach, you never know how long it's going to be up on there because of censorship and if it gets pulled down. So it's currently at the.sexuality.sanctuary. So those are the main places that you can find me.
Okay, will you send me an email with your Instagram so I can follow you? Well, that is our show for today, Carla. I really enjoyed you. It was so intriguing to speak to you, especially when you start talking about going to the play party, because I want to go to a play party, but I don't really know if I want to be a unicorn. I just want to go and watch first, because every play party that I've been to, they don't start to play until I be ready to go home. Like if I get there at 10, at 1 o'clock, I'm ready to go home. I'm this is my curfew. Like I have a curfew. I go home by a certain time because I be by myself. So I never get to see the play part because I'm at the party. So I'm trying to come later. And then if you come too late, then it's like you don't get the chance of the camaraderie of getting to know each other and kind of just vibing and see who. Yeah. So
organize your own, Kaci. Organize your own.
And you know what? I was sitting over here thinking about that with some of the things that you described. Like, man, I should probably do something myself and create a different type of environment. That is, the ones I've gone to, they're very welcoming and everything. It's just a little different for me because of my celibacy right now. And I'm trying to end it, but I just got to find the right person to end it with, because I don't want to end it and then be like, waited all this time for this. That would just be disappointment, right?
So what I did to find my current partner was I advertised on Field, you know, the app Field, that I was looking for a tantric sex partner because I'm doing further training in tantric sex. I needed a partner to do the practices with. So so I put an advert on Field, and that's how I met my current partner. And some other of my colleagues that are also doing the same training have also met similar sort of men. You know, men open to exploring the sexuality, good at communication. They have also met them on the Field app. So yeah, definitely give that one a go.
I'm gonna have to try this online dating thing. I'm so nervous, but I'm gonna give it a try. All right. Well, until next time, Carla. Talk to you later.
Thank you, Kaci. Bye.
Bye.
If you've enjoyed this video, like, share, subscribe, and turn on your notifications. New episode every Friday.